stop whatever you're doing right now. I mean it. Because what I'm about to share with you is going to sound almost too simple to be true, yet it's the exact reason why some people seem to glide through life's toughest moments, while others get completely crushed by challenges that, honestly, aren't even that serious. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to admit. You're not stuck because life is hard. You're stuck because nobody ever taught you the actual mechanics of solving problems. And I don't mean the think positive motivational fluff or the just work harder advice your parents gave you. I'm talking about a real, systematic approach that works whether you're dealing with a crumbling marriage, a career that makes you want to scream into a pillow every Monday morning, or debt that's eating you alive from the inside out. Right now, as you're reading this, there's probably at least one massive problem sitting in the back of your mind like an unwelcome house guest who refuses to leave. Maybe it's a relationship that feels like it's held together with duct tape and hope. Maybe it's a business idea you're too terrified to start. Maybe it's a health issue you keep ignoring because facing it feels too overwhelming. Whatever it is, you've tried fixing it. You've probably tried dozens of times, and yet here you are, still struggling with the same damn thing. But here's what's about to change everything for you. The reason you keep hitting the same walls over and over isn't because you're broken, lazy, or unlucky. It's because you've been using a broken map to navigate your life. You've been playing trial and error roulette, hoping something will eventually stick. And hope, my friend, is a beautiful emotion, but a terrible strategy. What I'm going to walk you through in this conversation isn't some feel-good philosophy. This is a step-by-step framework that transforms the chaos in your head into crystal clear action plans. By the time we're done here, you'll have a mental operating system that most people will never possess. You'll know exactly how to break down any obstacle, eliminate the confusion that keeps you paralyzed, and execute solutions that actually create lasting change instead of temporary band-aids. And the best part? This works for anything. Career transitions, money problems, relationships that feel impossible, health transformations, business challenges, personal growth plateaus. The framework doesn't care about the specific problem. It cares about the structure underneath all problems. So, let's get into it. Chapter 1. Why your brain keeps you stuck. Let me tell you something that might sting a little bit, but I promise it's coming from a place of genuine care. The reason most people stay trapped in the same frustrating cycles year after year, decade after decade, isn't because they lack intelligence or talent or resources. It's because, from the moment we could understand language, we've been programmed to think about problems in a way that's completely backwards. Think about how you were raised. When something went wrong as a kid, what happened? You probably got scolded, punished, or at minimum made to feel like you'd done something bad. Problems became associated with failure, shame, and negative consequences. Your brain learned a simple equation. Problem equals bad. Avoid at all costs. Fast forward to adulthood, and that programming is still running in the background like malware on your mental hard drive. When challenges appear, your first instinct isn't curiosity or strategic thinking, it's emotional reaction, stress, frustration, sometimes even panic. And when you're in that state, your problem-solving capacity drops to basically zero. But here's the radical reframe that changes everything, and I mean everything. Problems aren't attacks on your life. They're not evidence that you're failing or that the universe hates you. Problems are data. They're your life's way of sending you information about what needs to shift, what skills you need to develop, or what direction you need to move toward. Let me give you a different lens to look through. Think about the most successful person you personally know. Not some billionaire you read about online, but someone in your actual life who seems to navigate challenges with this weird, almost supernatural ease. Have you ever noticed that they don't seem to have fewer problems than you? In fact, they probably have more problems, bigger problems, more complex problems. The difference is in how they relate to those problems. They've learned to see obstacles as fuel instead of barriers. Every problem they solve makes them stronger, sharper, more capable of handling the next challenge. It's like working out at a gym. The resistance isn't trying to hurt you. The resistance is what builds the muscle. And here's where it gets really interesting. This is actually why economic mobility is so hard to achieve. It's not primarily about money. It's about problem-solving capacity. People who stay in financial struggle tend to avoid problems, complain about problems, or wait for someone else to solve their problems. People who build wealth actively seek out problems, embrace difficult challenges, and build their success by solving problems that others won't touch because they're too scary or complicated. Now, before you think I'm about to hit you with some just be positive nonsense, let me be clear. Mindset matters, but mindset without method is just wishful thinking wearing a motivational quote t-shirt. The truth that nobody talks about is this. Problem solving is a learnable skill. It's not genetic. It's not a talent you're born with or without. It's a systematic process that can be taught, practiced, and mastered just like you learn to ride a bike or cook a decent meal or navigate social situations. Most people approach problems reactively. Something breaks, and they immediately start throwing solutions at it without understanding what they're actually dealing with. It's like trying to fix a leaking pipe in your house without knowing where the leak is coming from. You might get lucky once in a while, but usually you just make a bigger mess. Elite problem solvers, the people who seem to have this magical ability to find solutions for everything, don't just jump into action. They follow a process, a framework. And that framework has 4 fundamental stages that apply to literally every problem you'll ever face. First, problem identification, where you learn to see what's actually happening instead of what you think is happening. Second, root cause analysis, where you dig past the surface symptoms to find the real source of the issue. Third, solution generation, where you create multiple options instead of grabbing the first idea that pops into your head. Fourth, implementation and optimization, where you execute your solution and refine it based on real-world feedback. But here's the thing that trips everyone up. Before you can use this framework effectively, you need to understand the mental traps that keep most people stuck. These are invisible barriers that prevent clear thinking and effective action. If you don't recognize these traps in yourself, no framework in the world will help you. Trap number 1, emotional hijacking. When problems hit, especially unexpected ones, your brain's emotional centers light up before your logical thinking centers even wake up. You feel stressed, angry, frustrated, maybe even panicked. And these emotions don't just color your judgment, they completely cloud it. You start making decisions based on how you feel rather than what the situation actually requires. The people who consistently solve problems well have trained themselves to pause, to breathe, to shift from emotional reaction mode to analytical thinking mode. It's not about suppressing emotions. It's about acknowledging them without letting them drive the car. Trap number 2, assumption addiction. Your brain is lazy, not in a bad way, just efficient. It's constantly making assumptions to save energy, filling in gaps with information from past experiences, even when those experiences have nothing to do with your current situation. You assume you know what the problem is before you've properly investigated it. You assume certain solutions won't work before you've tested them. These assumptions create invisible prison bars that keep you trapped in old patterns. Trap number 3, solution attachment. You fall in love with your first idea. You become emotionally invested in making it work. And even when the evidence clearly shows it's not the right approach, you waste time, energy, and resources trying to force a square peg into a round hole instead of stepping back and generating better options. Trap number 4, perfectionist paralysis. You wait for the perfect solution before taking any action. You overanalyze, over-research, over-plan, while the problem gets worse. You convince yourself you need more information, more time, more resources before you can move forward. Meanwhile, the clock keeps ticking and your problem keeps growing. Understanding these traps is crucial because they operate below your conscious awareness. You don't realize you're falling into them until you're already stuck at the bottom. But once you know what to look for, you can catch yourself mid-fall and redirect your thinking. Here's the most important thing to internalize. Problem solving isn't about eliminating all problems from your life. That's not only impossible, it would actually make you weaker. Problems are like resistance training for your mind. The more challenging problems you solve, the stronger your problem-solving muscles become. Each challenge is preparing you for bigger opportunities ahead. Chapter 2, the art of seeing what's really there. All right, let's talk about something that sounds obvious, but is actually where most people completely fail. Before you can solve any problem effectively, you must first understand what you're actually dealing with. And I know what you're thinking. Of course I know what my problem is. That's why I'm looking for a solution. But here's the thing. Most people are reacting to symptoms instead of addressing root causes. They're solving the wrong problem perfectly instead of solving the right problem adequately. It's like taking pain medication for a broken bone. Sure, the pain goes away temporarily, but the bone is still broken. Problem identification is both an art and a science. It requires you to step back from your immediate emotional reaction and observe the situation with the detachment of a detective examining a crime scene. You're not trying to fix anything yet. You're trying to understand what's really happening beneath the surface. Let me introduce you to what I call the 5-layer method. Most people only see the surface layer of their problems. They see the argument with their partner, the difficult boss, the credit card bill, the number on the scale. But these are often just the visible manifestations of deeper issues. Layer 1 is the surface problem, what immediately triggers your stress or catches your attention. Layer 2 is the pattern, how often this type of situation occurs and under what circumstances. Layer 3 is the underlying system, the environmental or structural factors that allow this problem to exist. Layer 4 is the root behavior, the habits, decisions, or actions that created the conditions for this problem. Layer 5 is the core belief or assumption that drives the behavior. Let me show you how this works with a real example. Surface problem. You're chronically late to everything, and it's causing serious stress at work and damaging your relationships. Layer 2, the pattern. This happens most mornings and whenever you have important commitments. Layer 3, the system. You don't have consistent routines, you underestimate how long tasks take, and you pack too much into your schedule. Layer 4, the behavior. You say yes to too many commitments and you don't plan buffer time. Layer 5, the core belief. You believe that being busy makes you valuable, and you're terrified that saying no will disappoint people or make them think less of you. See what happened there? Once you identify that core belief, you realize this isn't actually a time management problem. It's a boundary and self-worth problem. You could read every time management book ever written, but until you address that underlying belief system, you'll keep struggling with the same issue. The next technique is problem mapping. Grab a piece of paper or open a notes app on your phone. Write your problem in the center. Now branch out with everything connected to it, no matter how loosely related it seems. Include the people involved, environmental factors, timing issues, resource constraints, emotional impacts, long-term consequences. Don't judge or filter anything at this stage. You're creating a visual ecosystem of your problem. This technique reveals connections you wouldn't normally see. You might realize that your relationship struggle is connected to work stress, which is connected to financial pressure, which is connected to career dissatisfaction, which is connected to unclear life goals. What looked like 5 separate problems are actually different symptoms of the same underlying issue. Here's another powerful technique: perspective shifting. Examine your problem from multiple viewpoints. How would it look to someone who deeply loves you? How would it look to someone who's completely objective and doesn't care about you at all? How would it look to someone from a completely different culture or time period? How would it look to someone who's already successfully solved a similar problem? Each perspective reveals different aspects of the situation. The person who loves you might see self-imposed limitations you don't notice. The objective observer might see simple solutions you're overlooking because you're too emotionally tangled up. The cultural outsider might see assumptions you're making that aren't actually true or necessary. Timeline analysis is next. Map out how your problem developed over time. When did you first notice it? What was happening in your life when it started? How has it changed or evolved? What have you already tried? And what were the results? This historical perspective often reveals patterns you've completely missed. You might discover that your problem always gets worse during certain seasons, after specific types of events, or when you're dealing with particular stressors. These patterns give you massive clues about underlying causes and potential solutions. Now, let's talk about impact assessment. You're going to quantify the real cost of this problem in your life. Not just the obvious costs, but the hidden ones too. What is it costing you in time, money, energy, relationships, opportunities, health, and peace of mind? What would your life actually look like if this problem didn't exist? What becomes possible when you solve it? This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about creating genuine urgency and motivation. When you fully understand what your problem is really costing you, you'll be more committed to finding a solution instead of just tolerating the situation indefinitely. Here's a technique most people never consider. Resource inventory. List everything you have available to address this problem. Your skills, knowledge, experience, relationships, financial resources, time, energy, tools, or systems you can access. Also include resources you could potentially access if needed. Most people dramatically underestimate their available resources. They focus on what they don't have instead of leveraging what they do have. This inventory helps you see possibilities you might have completely overlooked. The final technique in problem identification is constraint identification. What are the real limitations you're working within? Which constraints are actual facts, and which are assumptions you're making? Which constraints can be changed, worked around, or eliminated entirely? For example, you might assume you can't change careers because you have a mortgage. But is that actually true? Could you reduce expenses, increase income gradually, or find a transition path that doesn't require an immediate income drop? Challenge every single constraint to determine if it's real or imaginary. By the end of this identification process, you should have a completely different understanding of your problem than when you started. You'll see it as part of a larger system rather than an isolated incident. You'll understand the deeper patterns and root causes. You'll have clarity about what's really at stake and what resources you actually have available. This clarity is the foundation for everything that follows. You cannot solve a problem you don't understand, and you cannot understand a problem you haven't properly investigated. Chapter 3. Digging for Buried Treasure. The Root Cause. Okay, so you've identified what you're dealing with. Now comes the part where most people completely fall apart. Finding the root cause. This is the difference between putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound and actually removing the bullet. Most people treat symptoms instead of addressing the source. They solve the same problem over and over because they never eliminate what's creating it in the first place. It's exhausting, frustrating, and completely unnecessary once you know how to dig deeper. Root cause analysis is like being a detective in your own life. You're looking for evidence, following clues, and building a case based on facts rather than assumptions or gut feelings. The first method is called the 5 whys technique. You start with your problem statement and ask why it's happening. Then you ask why that reason is happening. You continue asking why 5 times or until you reach a root cause that you can actually control or influence. Let me walk you through this with a common example. Your problem. You're not saving money despite earning a decent income. Why aren't you saving money? Because you spend everything you earn. Why do you spend everything you earn? Because you have a lot of monthly expenses. Why do you have so many monthly expenses? Because you've committed to subscriptions, payments, and lifestyle choices that consume your entire income. Why did you make those commitments? Because you wanted to enjoy your money and you thought you'd start saving later when you earned more. Why did you think you'd save later instead of now? Because you believe that happiness comes from spending money on experiences and things, and you're afraid that saving means depriving yourself of joy. Now we can see the root cause isn't a budgeting problem or even an income problem. It's a belief system about money and happiness. Until you address that belief system, no budgeting technique will create lasting change. You'll just feel restricted and eventually break your own rules. The second method is systems thinking. Every problem exists within a system of interconnected parts. To find the root cause, you need to understand how these parts influence each other. If your problem is poor health, your system might include your daily schedule, work stress, social environment, family habits, available time, knowledge about nutrition and exercise, emotional coping mechanisms, and social pressures. Look for the leverage points in this system, the places where small changes can create big results. You might discover that your health problem isn't caused by lack of willpower or knowledge. It might be caused by a work schedule that doesn't allow time for meal prep, which leads to fast food, which creates energy crashes, which leads to caffeine dependence, which disrupts sleep, which increases stress, which makes healthy choices even harder. The leverage point might be negotiating a different work schedule or batch preparing healthy meals on Sunday. Attacking the problem at this systemic level is infinitely more effective than trying to white-knuckle your way through willpower alone. Pattern recognition is the third method. Look at your history with this type of problem. When else have you experienced something similar? What were the common factors? What was different about the times you successfully handled it versus the times you struggled? Let's say you have a pattern of starting ambitious projects with enthusiasm, but never finishing them. Look at all the projects you've started. What did they have in common? Were they too ambitious from the start? Did you lack a clear plan? Did you get distracted by shiny new opportunities? Did you lose motivation when the initial excitement faded? Did you lack accountability or support systems? You might discover that your root cause isn't laziness or lack of discipline. It might be that you consistently underestimate the time and effort required, or you choose projects based on fantasy rather than realistic assessment of your capacity and genuine interest level. Chapter 3. Digging for Buried Treasure. Devon. Environmental analysis is the fourth method, and it's one people overlook constantly. Your problems don't exist in a vacuum. They're heavily influenced by your physical environment, social environment, and information environment. What in your surroundings is contributing to or maintaining this problem? If your problem is procrastination, look around your workspace. Is it cluttered and full of distractions? Are you trying to work in the same space where you relax, watch TV, and scroll through social media? Are you surrounded by people who also procrastinate and normalize it? Are you consuming media that reinforces limiting beliefs about productivity? Sometimes the root cause is as simple as environmental design that makes the wrong choices easier than the right choices. Your willpower is a limited resource that gets depleted throughout the day. But if you change your environment, you can eliminate the need for willpower entirely. Put your phone in another room. Clear your desk. Work in a coffee shop where everyone else is focused. Remove the friction from good choices and add friction to bad choices. The fifth method is emotion tracking. Many problems are driven by unresolved emotions or emotional patterns that operate completely below your conscious awareness. Start paying attention to what you're feeling before, during, and after your problem occurs. If your problem is overeating, track not just what you eat, but what you're feeling when you reach for food. Are you actually hungry? Or are you stressed, bored, lonely, celebrating, or avoiding something else? Are you using food to regulate emotions that you don't know how to handle directly? The root cause of overeating is almost never hunger. It's usually an emotional regulation strategy that worked at some point in your life, but is now creating more problems than it solves. Once you see this pattern clearly, you can develop alternative strategies for handling those emotions. Assumption challenging is the sixth method. List all the assumptions you're making about your problem and systematically challenge each one. What if the opposite were true? What if your assumption is only partially true? What if it's true in some contexts, but not others? If your problem is feeling stuck in your career, you might assume that changing direction would require starting over completely, that you're too old to make a change, that you don't have the right connections, or that you can't afford a temporary income reduction. Challenge each assumption ruthlessly. Is starting over really necessary, or could you transition gradually by leveraging transferable skills? Are there examples of people who made successful career changes at your age or older? Are connections really required, or are there other paths into a new field? Could you build a financial bridge by freelancing or consulting while you transition? Many problems persist indefinitely because we accept limitations that aren't actually real. Challenging your assumptions opens up possibilities you couldn't see before because you'd unconsciously ruled them out. The seventh method is stakeholder analysis. Who else is affected by your problem? Who benefits from the current situation staying the same? Who would be impacted if you solved it? Sometimes problems persist because solving them would require other people to change, and they're resisting that change either consciously or unconsciously. If your problem is working too many hours, consider who benefits from your overwork. Does your boss rely on your willingness to handle extra responsibilities? Does your family depend on the overtime income? Do you get validation from being seen as indispensable? Are you avoiding personal relationships or responsibilities by staying busy with work? Understanding these dynamics helps you see why change feels difficult and what you'll need to address beyond just managing your own time better. Sometimes you need to have difficult conversations. Sometimes you need to set boundaries. Sometimes you need to find alternative sources of validation or income. The final method is resource gap analysis. Compare what you need to solve this problem with what you currently have. The gap between these two things often reveals the root cause. You might think you need more time, money, or knowledge, but when you really examine it, the actual gap might be in your beliefs about what's possible, your willingness to ask for help, your ability to prioritize effectively, or your confidence in your own judgment. Root cause analysis takes patience and brutal honesty with yourself. You have to be willing to look past comfortable explanations to find uncomfortable truths. You have to be willing to take responsibility for your part in creating or maintaining the problem, even when there are external factors involved. But this process is genuinely liberating. When you find the real root cause, you stop wasting time on solutions that can't possibly work. You stop repeating the same frustrating patterns. You gain the power to create lasting change because you're finally addressing what actually needs to be fixed. Chapter 4. Creating Options. Solution Generation. Now that you understand your problem and have identified its root cause, it's time to generate solutions. And this is where most people's creativity either shines brilliantly or crashes spectacularly. The difference between people who find breakthrough solutions and people who stay stuck using the same tired approaches comes down to how they generate and evaluate options. Most people generate solutions completely wrong. They go with the first idea that pops into their head, usually something they've tried before or something obvious that everyone else would think of. They limit themselves to solutions that feel comfortable or familiar. They don't push past their initial thoughts to find more creative and effective possibilities. Elite problem solvers approach solution generation systematically. They use specific techniques to break out of conventional thinking and explore possibilities that others completely miss. They generate multiple options before evaluating any of them. They separate the creative phase from the critical phase to avoid shutting down promising ideas too early. Let me share the techniques that actually work. Brainstorming with constraints is the first one. Instead of trying to think of any possible solution, you're going to brainstorm solutions within specific parameters. This might seem limiting, but constraints actually boost creativity by forcing your brain to think differently. Set different constraint scenarios. What if you had unlimited money, but only 1 week to solve this? What if you had no money, but unlimited time? What if you could only use resources you already have? What if you had to solve this problem in a way that also helped someone else? What if you had to solve it without anyone knowing you were working on it? Each constraint forces you to consider different angles and possibilities. The solution you find under one constraint might be perfectly adaptable to your actual circumstances, or it might inspire a completely different approach you wouldn't have considered otherwise. Perspective multiplication is the second technique. Generate solutions from radically different viewpoints. How would a successful entrepreneur approach this problem? How would an artist approach it? How would someone from Japan or Brazil handle it? How would someone who's completely unqualified but fearless tackle it? How would someone with completely different values or priorities solve it? Each perspective brings different assumptions, priorities, and creative approaches. An entrepreneur might focus on efficiency and return on investment. An artist might prioritize creative expression and emotional authenticity. Someone from a collectivist culture might see family or community dynamics you're overlooking. Someone unqualified might suggest something so simple that experts would never consider it, because They're trapped in conventional thinking. The third technique is solution scaling. Generate solutions at different scales and intensities. What's the absolute minimal viable solution that would create some improvement? What's the moderate solution that would create significant change? What's the maximum solution that would completely transform the situation? What's the radical solution that would eliminate the entire category of problem? For example, if your problem is feeling disconnected from old friends, the minimal solution might be sending one meaningful text message per week to stay in touch. The moderate solution might be scheduling monthly video calls or quarterly meetups. The maximum solution might be planning a reunion trip or intentionally moving to the same city. The radical solution might be building such a strong sense of self and purpose that you don't need external validation from friendships to feel fulfilled. Each scale reveals different possibilities and helps you see the full spectrum of options available. Reverse engineering is the fourth technique. Find examples of people who have solved similar problems successfully and work backwards to understand how they did it. This isn't about copying their exact approach. It's about understanding the principles and strategies that made their solution work. Research case studies, read biographies and memoirs, find interviews or podcasts, or if possible, directly contact people who faced similar challenges. What did they do that others don't? What assumptions did they challenge? What resources did they leverage? What mistakes did they avoid? What would they do differently if they had to solve the problem again, knowing what they know now? Component mixing is the fifth technique. Break your problem down into separate components and generate solutions for each piece independently. Then look for ways to combine solutions from different components to create hybrid approaches. If your problem is starting a side business while working full-time, your components might include time management, skill development, initial funding, market research, product development, and customer acquisition. Generate solutions for each component separately. Then look for creative combinations. Maybe you use your lunch breaks for customer interviews and market research. Maybe you use your commute time for skill development through podcasts and audiobooks. Maybe you use your evenings and weekends for product development. Maybe you use your existing professional network for your first customers and testimonials. The sixth technique is assumption reversal. List the assumptions that most people make about solving this type of problem. Then deliberately generate solutions that reverse those assumptions. If the common assumption is that changing careers requires going back to school, generate solutions that don't require formal education. If the assumption is that starting a business requires significant capital, generate solutions that require zero upfront investment. If the assumption is that fixing a relationship requires both people to change equally, generate solutions where only you change your approach and responses. Timeline variation is the seventh technique. Generate solutions for different time horizons. What could you do in the next hour that would make a difference? What could you accomplish this week? What becomes possible over the next month? What could you achieve in a year? What would be possible if you had 5 years to solve this? Different time horizons open up completely different possibilities. The 1-hour solution might be making a phone call that changes everything. The 1-week solution might involve focused research and strategic planning. The 1-month solution might include skill development or relationship building. The 1-year solution might involve major life changes or career transitions. The 5-year solution might be building something from scratch that doesn't currently exist. The 8th technique is resource substitution. Generate solutions that use completely different types of resources than what you initially considered. If your first instinct is to solve the problem with money, generate solutions using time, relationships, skills, or creativity. Instead, if you thought you needed more knowledge, generate solutions using existing experience or learning by doing approaches. This technique often reveals that you have way more options than you initially realized. You might not have the financial resources to hire an expert, but you might have the relationship resources to find a mentor. You might not have the time to research extensively, but you might have the creativity to design small experiments and learn from direct experience. Stakeholder solutions is the 9th technique. Generate solutions from the perspective of everyone affected by or involved in the problem. What would solve this problem for your boss, for your family, for your customers, for your community, for other people facing similar challenges? Sometimes the best solution serves multiple stakeholders simultaneously. Sometimes you realize that what looks like your problem is actually someone else's problem that you've been trying to solve for them. Sometimes you discover that other people have resources, motivation, or capabilities to help that you hadn't considered because you were focused on solving everything yourself. The final technique is future-back thinking. Imagine that it's 1 year from now and you've successfully solved this problem. Your life has transformed in exactly the ways you wanted. Now work backwards from that success to figure out what must have happened to get there. What decisions did you make? What actions did you take first, second, third? What help did you get, and from whom? What obstacles did you overcome, and how? What surprised you about the journey? This technique bypasses the mental blocks that prevent you from seeing possibilities. When you assume the problem is already solved, your brain stops focusing on why things won't work and starts revealing how they could work. It's incredibly powerful for unlocking solutions you couldn't access through forward thinking alone. By the end of this solution generation phase, you should have dozens of potential approaches written down. Don't evaluate them yet. Don't worry about whether they're realistic or practical. Just get them all out of your head and onto paper or a digital document. The evaluation comes next. But first, you need to give your creative mind full permission to explore without the harsh judgment of your critical mind shutting down possibilities before they've had a chance to develop. Chapter 5. Choosing Your Path. Solution Evaluation. Having multiple potential solutions is worthless if you can't determine which approach will actually work in your specific situation. This evaluation phase separates effective problem solvers from people who stay stuck in endless analysis or jump into action without thinking through the consequences. Most people evaluate solutions based on gut feeling, what seems easiest in the moment, or what worked for someone else in a completely different situation. This leads to wasted time, failed attempts, and growing frustration with the entire problem-solving process. You need a systematic approach to determine which solution has the highest probability of success, given your unique circumstances, resources, and constraints. The first evaluation criterion is feasibility assessment. For each potential solution, honestly assess whether you can actually implement it given your current resources and constraints. This includes your time, money, skills, relationships, and any external factors you genuinely can't control. Don't just ask whether it's theoretically possible. Ask whether it's realistically achievable for you specifically right now, with everything else going on in your life. Consider your other commitments, your actual availability, your real skill level, and your genuine motivation to follow through. A solution that looks absolutely perfect on paper but requires you to completely change your personality or life circumstances probably isn't your best option. You need solutions that work with who you actually are, not who you wish you were. The second criterion is impact potential. How much would each solution actually improve your situation if implemented successfully? Some solutions might be incredibly easy to implement, but only create minor improvements. Others might be more challenging, but completely transform your circumstances. Rate each solution on its potential to address the root cause you identified earlier, not just mask the surface symptoms. A solution that makes you feel better temporarily but doesn't address underlying patterns will need to be repeated endlessly. A solution that addresses the root cause might require more initial effort but creates lasting change that compounds over time. The third criterion is risk assessment. What could go wrong with each solution? What are the potential negative consequences or unintended side effects? What would you lose if the solution doesn't work as planned? What bridges might you burn? What opportunities might you miss while pursuing this approach? This isn't about being pessimistic or talking yourself out of taking action. It's about being realistic so you can prepare for potential obstacles and make truly informed decisions. Some risks are absolutely worth taking because the potential rewards justify them. Others aren't worth the potential downside, especially if there are lower risk alternatives available. Time horizon analysis is the fourth criterion. How long will each solution take to show results? Do you need immediate relief, or can you invest in longer-term approaches? Are you dealing with a crisis that requires quick action, or a chronic issue that needs sustainable change? Match your solution's timeline to your actual needs. If you're in financial crisis right now, you might need immediate income generation, even if it's not your ideal career direction. If you're dealing with a relationship pattern that's been building for years, you might need to commit to a longer-term therapeutic approach, even if it doesn't show immediate dramatic results. The fifth criterion is alignment assessment. How well does each solution align with your core values, long-term goals, and authentic identity? Will implementing this solution move you toward the person you want to become? Or will it require you to act in ways that feel fundamentally inauthentic? Solutions that require you to violate your core values or compromise your integrity might work short-term, but create new problems down the road. Solutions that align with your natural strengths and authentic self are more likely to be sustainable and personally satisfying over time. Learning potential is the sixth criterion. What will you gain from attempting each solution regardless of whether it succeeds completely? Will you develop new skills, build valuable relationships, gain important insights, create opportunities for future solutions? Sometimes a solution is worth trying not because it's guaranteed to work perfectly, but because the attempt itself will teach you something valuable or put you in position for better opportunities. Intelligent failure can be a setup for future success if you're learning and building capacity along the way. The seventh criterion is reversibility. How easily can you undo or change course if the solution doesn't work as expected? Some solutions are highly reversible with minimal cost or consequences. Others involve commitments that are difficult or expensive to change. Generally, it makes sense to start with more reversible solutions unless you have compelling reasons to make irreversible commitments. This allows you to test approaches, gather real-world feedback, and adjust your strategy based on actual results rather than theoretical assumptions. Scalability is the eighth criterion. Can this solution grow with you, or will you outgrow it quickly? If the solution works, can you expand or enhance it? If you're building something, can it handle increased demand or complexity? This is particularly important for business solutions, career strategies, and relationship approaches. A solution that works beautifully at a small scale but breaks down when you try to expand might not be the best long-term choice. After evaluating each solution against these criteria, you'll likely find that no single approach is perfect across all dimensions. This is completely normal and expected. The goal isn't to find a perfect solution. The goal is to find the best available option given your current circumstances. Create a simple scoring system if it helps. Rate each solution from 1 to 5 on each criterion that matters for your specific situation. Add up the scores to get an overall ranking. But don't just automatically go with the highest score. Look at the pattern of strengths and weaknesses. A solution with a high overall score but very low feasibility probably isn't your best choice right now. A solution with moderate scores across all criteria might be more practical than one with extremely high impact potential, but high risk and low feasibility. Consider combination approaches too. Can you implement parts of multiple solutions? Can you sequence solutions, starting with one approach and transitioning to another as your circumstances improve? Can you hedge your bets by pursuing multiple solutions simultaneously? The most important thing is to make a decision and commit to testing it. Analysis paralysis kills more dreams than failure ever will. You can't know for certain how well a solution will work until you actually try it in the real world. Perfect information is rarely available, and waiting for absolute certainty is usually just procrastination disguised as prudence. Set clear criteria for success and failure before you start implementing. How will you know if the solution is working? What specific metrics will you track? How long will you test the approach before evaluating its effectiveness? What results would cause you to modify the approach versus abandoning it completely? This evaluation framework prevents you from getting emotionally attached to solutions that aren't working. It helps you make objective decisions based on evidence rather than hope or stubbornness. It also prevents you from giving up prematurely on solutions that are actually working, but just need more time or minor adjustments to reach their full potential. Remember that problem solving is an iterative process. Your first solution attempt rarely solves everything perfectly, but each attempt gives you better information for the next iteration. The goal is consistent progress, not instant perfection. Chapter 6, Making It Real, Implementation. All right, choosing the right solution is only half the battle. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a quarter of the battle. Implementation is where most people fail spectacularly. And I mean spectacularly. They have brilliant plans, clear strategies, logical approaches that make perfect sense on paper, but they can't execute consistently. They start strong, hit the first real obstacle, lose motivation, and abandon their solution before it even has a chance to work. The difference between people who solve problems permanently and people who stay stuck in the same cycles isn't intelligence or resources. It's their ability to execute solutions systematically and persistently until they get actual results. And here's the good news. Implementation is a skill that can be learned and mastered, just like everything else we've talked about. The first principle of successful implementation is starting before you're ready. Most people wait until conditions are perfect, until they have all the information, until they feel completely confident. This is a trap that keeps you stuck indefinitely. Perfect conditions never exist. Complete information is never available. And confidence doesn't come from preparation. Confidence comes from action, from doing the thing and proving to yourself that you can handle it. Elite problem solvers start with whatever they have, wherever they are, right now. They understand that implementation reveals information that planning simply can't provide. They know that taking imperfect action generates momentum, feedback, and opportunities that staying in planning mode never will. Your implementation strategy should follow what I call the minimum viable action principle. What's the smallest possible step you can take today that moves you toward your solution? Don't worry about the perfect first step or having the complete plan mapped out. Focus on the next logical action that requires the least resistance and provides the most learning. If your solution involves exercising regularly, the minimum viable action isn't joining a gym and committing to 5 workouts per week. It's putting on workout clothes and doing 10 minutes of movement today. If your solution involves improving your marriage, the minimum viable action isn't scheduling couples therapy. It's having one honest conversation tonight about how you're both feeling. Small actions build momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence enables bigger actions. This is how transformation actually happens in real life. The second principle is designing your environment for success. Listen carefully to this because it's crucial. Your willpower is limited and unreliable. If your solution depends on constant self-discipline and motivation, it will fail the moment life gets stressful or your enthusiasm fades. Instead, design your environment so that the right choices become automatic and the wrong choices become difficult or impossible. If your solution involves morning exercise, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Put your alarm clock across the room so you have to get out of bed to turn it off. If your solution involves eating healthier, remove tempting foods from your house entirely and stock it with nutritious options that are ready to eat. If your solution involves focused work on important projects, create a dedicated workspace and use website blockers to eliminate digital distractions during work hours. If your solution involves improving your closest relationship, schedule regular check-in conversations on your calendar, like their business meetings you can't miss. Create rituals around connection, like coffee together every morning or a walk after dinner every evening. The environment always wins over willpower. Design it accordingly. The third principle is implementation tracking. You cannot manage what you don't measure. Create simple systems to track your progress, and I mean actually track it, not just think about it vaguely. But here's the key. Track your actions, not just your outcomes. Track your consistency, not just your performance. If your solution is building a business, don't just track revenue. Track how many hours you worked on it, how many potential customers you contacted, how many experiments you ran. If your solution is improving your health, don't just track your weight. Track how many days you exercised, how many home-cooked meals you ate, how many hours of quality sleep you got. Leading indicators predict future results. Lagging indicators only tell you what already happened. Focus on the inputs you control, and the outputs will take care of themselves over time. Use daily check-ins to review what you did and didn't do. Weekly reviews to identify patterns in what's working and what isn't. Monthly assessments to monitor overall progress and make strategic adjustments. This regular review rhythm keeps you honest and allows you to course correct before small problems become major setbacks. The fourth principle is obstacle anticipation. Every solution will face obstacles, guaranteed. Instead of hoping obstacles won't appear or being shocked when they do, plan for them in advance. Ask yourself, what could prevent me from implementing this solution? What external barriers might arise? What internal resistance might I face? What competing priorities might interfere? What excuses will I be tempted to make? For each potential obstacle, develop a specific response strategy. If you know you tend to lose motivation after 2 weeks, plan exactly how you'll handle that motivation dip. Maybe you'll schedule a call with an accountability partner. Maybe you'll review your original reasons for pursuing this solution. Maybe you'll give yourself a small reward for pushing through the hard part. If you know certain people tend to discourage your efforts, plan how you'll limit their influence. Maybe you won't discuss your solution with them. Maybe you'll prepare responses to their typical objections. Maybe you'll spend more time with people who support your growth. If you know you struggle with time management, plan specific scheduling and prioritization systems before you need them. Block time on your calendar. Say no to requests that don't align with your priorities. Batch similar tasks together to minimize context switching. The fifth principle is progress celebration. Most people only celebrate final victories, the big dramatic transformations. But implementation requires sustaining motivation over time, sometimes over long periods of time. Celebrate small wins. Celebrate consistent execution. Celebrate progress milestones, even tiny ones. This isn't about lowering your standards or being satisfied with mediocrity. It's about maintaining the psychological fuel needed for long-term execution. Your brain responds to positive reinforcement. When you acknowledge progress, you create positive associations with the behaviors you're trying to maintain. Create specific celebration rituals for different types of progress. Acknowledge daily consistency, maybe with a simple check mark on a calendar or journal entry. Celebrate weekly achievements, perhaps by sharing them with a supportive friend or treating yourself to something you enjoy. Mark monthly milestones with something more significant. Share your progress with people who genuinely understand and support your journey. Document your improvements through photos, journal entries, or data so you can see how far you've come during difficult moments when you're tempted to give up. The sixth principle is iteration and optimization. Your first implementation attempt won't be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. Expect to refine your approach based on real-world feedback. The goal isn't to execute your original plan flawlessly. The goal is to achieve your desired outcome, even if that requires modifying your strategy significantly along the way. Build review cycles into your implementation process. Weekly reviews to assess what's working and what isn't. Monthly reviews to make strategic adjustments based on patterns you're noticing. Quarterly reviews to evaluate whether your solution is still the right approach for your evolving situation. Be willing to pivot when evidence shows that your current approach isn't producing results. But also, be patient enough to give solutions adequate time to work before abandoning them prematurely. The balance between persistence and flexibility is something you develop through experience. The seventh principle is accountability systems. External accountability dramatically increases implementation success rates. This could be a coach, mentor, accountability partner, support group, mastermind, or public commitment. The key is creating consequences for not following through and support for staying on track. Human beings are social creatures. We perform better when we know others are watching, expecting, and depending on us. Choose accountability that matches your personality and situation. Some people thrive with public commitments on social media and the social pressure that creates. Others prefer private accountability with one or two trusted individuals. Some respond well to financial stakes, like betting money with a friend that you'll follow through. Some are motivated by competitive elements, like competing with friends to see who can maintain consistency longest. Find what motivates you specifically, not what works for other people. The eighth principle is habit integration. The most sustainable solutions become habits, rather than conscious decisions you have to make repeatedly. Look for ways to integrate your solution into existing routines and systems you already have. Attach new behaviors to established habits. Use what behavior scientists call habit stacking. If you already drink coffee every morning, attach your new behavior to that existing habit. After I pour my coffee, I will spend 10 minutes planning my day. If you already brush your teeth before bed, use that as a trigger for a new evening routine. Create environmental triggers that prompt the right actions automatically. Put your vitamins next to your coffee maker. Put your running shoes by the door. Put a book on your pillow if you want to read before bed instead of scrolling your phone. The final principle is persistence through plateaus. Every implementation process includes periods where progress seems to stop or slow dramatically. These plateaus are completely normal and temporary, but they're where most people quit. Understanding this pattern and preparing for it psychologically is crucial for long-term success. Plateaus often occur right before major breakthroughs. Your brain and body are adapting to new patterns, building new neural pathways, but the visible results haven't caught up yet. It's like planting seeds. There's a period where nothing seems to be happening above ground, but massive growth is occurring beneath the surface. During plateaus, focus on consistency rather than intensity. Trust the process and continue executing even when you can't see immediate progress. Review your tracking data to remind yourself that you are moving forward even when it doesn't feel like it. Remember that implementation is a skill. The more problems you solve using systematic implementation, the better you become at executing solutions quickly and effectively. Each successful implementation builds your confidence and competence for future challenges. Chapter 7. Building an Unbreakable Mind. The most sophisticated problem-solving framework in the world is completely useless if you fall apart mentally when facing real challenges. Your ability to think clearly, stay focused, and maintain perspective under pressure determines whether you'll successfully implement solutions or abandon them the moment things get difficult. Mental resilience isn't about being tough or emotionless or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It's about developing the psychological skills to process stress, uncertainty, and setbacks without losing your ability to think strategically and act effectively. It's about maintaining your problem-solving capacity, even when your emotions are screaming at you and your circumstances feel chaotic. The first component of mental resilience is emotional regulation mastery. Your emotions provide incredibly valuable information about what matters to you and what needs attention. But they can also hijack your decision-making and cloud your judgment if you let them run the show. Learning to acknowledge emotions without being controlled by them is fundamental to clear thinking under pressure. When you feel strong emotions arising, use what I call the stop technique. Stop whatever you're doing. Take a deep breath and notice what you're feeling. Observe the thoughts and physical sensations without judging them as good or bad. Proceed with conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. This simple practice creates space between stimulus and response. That space is where your power lives. Practice the box breathing pattern when you need to calm your nervous system quickly. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Breathe out for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Repeat this pattern for 2 minutes. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system and shifts you from reactive fight or flight mode to responsive rest and digest mode. It's a biological reset button that actually works. The second component is cognitive flexibility. Rigid thinking kills problem-solving effectiveness. When your initial approach doesn't work, you need to shift perspectives, try different strategies, and remain genuinely open to unexpected solutions. This requires training your mind to hold multiple possibilities simultaneously without collapsing into binary either-or thinking. Practice both and thinking instead of either-or thinking. Instead of seeing situations as completely good or completely bad, look for how they might contain both positive and negative elements simultaneously. Instead of seeing solutions as perfect or worthless, evaluate their partial benefits and genuine limitations. Develop your ability to zoom in and zoom out mentally. When you're overwhelmed by details, practice zooming out to see the bigger picture and long-term perspective. When you're paralyzed by the magnitude of a problem, zoom in to identify specific, manageable actions you can take immediately. The third component is uncertainty tolerance. Most problems don't have clear, guaranteed solutions. You have to take action without knowing exactly how things will turn out. People who can't tolerate uncertainty either avoid taking action entirely or become paralyzed by anxiety about potential negative outcomes. Reframe uncertainty from a threat to an opportunity. Uncertainty means that negative outcomes aren't guaranteed any more than positive outcomes are. It means you have genuine influence over the results through your choices and actions. It means possibilities exist that you haven't even considered yet. Practice making decisions with incomplete information. Start with low-stakes decisions and gradually work up to more significant choices. Notice that you can make good decisions without perfect certainty. Build evidence through experience that uncertainty doesn't prevent success. The fourth component is failure reframing. Most people avoid attempting solutions because they're terrified of failure. But failure is simply information, not condemnation or evidence of your unworthiness. It tells you what doesn't work so you can adjust your approach. It builds resilience and problem-solving capacity. It often leads to better solutions than you would have found otherwise if you're willing to learn from it. Adopt what I call the scientist mindset toward your problem-solving efforts. Scientists don't consider failed experiments as personal failures. They see them as data points that contribute to eventual success. Each failed approach eliminates one possibility and moves you closer to the solution that will actually work. Create a failure learning system. When something doesn't work as expected, ask specific questions. What exactly didn't work? What did work partially or surprisingly well? What assumptions were incorrect? What would I do differently next time? What did I learn that I can apply to future challenges? This transforms failure from an ending into a beginning, from a stop sign into a redirect sign. The fifth component is stress inoculation. You can't eliminate stress from problem solving, but you can build your capacity to perform well under stress. This requires gradually exposing yourself to manageable levels of pressure and uncertainty while practicing your problem-solving skills. Deliberately practice solving problems under time pressure or with distractions present. Work on challenging puzzles when you're tired or stressed. Make quick decisions when the stakes are relatively low. This builds your confidence in your ability to think clearly even when conditions aren't ideal. It's like building physical fitness. You gradually increase the weight, the distance, the intensity. Your capacity grows to match the demands. The sixth component is identity resilience. Many people tie their self-worth to their success at solving specific problems. When they struggle or fail, they take it as evidence that they're fundamentally incompetent or inadequate. This creates a brutal downward spiral where emotional distress impairs problem-solving ability even further. Separate your identity from your problem-solving outcomes. You are not your problems, and your worth as a human being isn't determined by your ability to solve every challenge perfectly. You are someone who solves problems, learns from setbacks, and grows stronger through challenges. That's your identity. The outcomes of specific attempts are just data points, not verdicts on your value. The seventh component is support system activation. Resilience isn't about handling everything alone. It's about knowing when and how to access help, guidance, and emotional support from others. Create your resilient support network before you need it. Identify people who can provide different types of assistance during difficult problem-solving periods. Practical advice, emotional encouragement, alternative perspectives, accountability, professional expertise. Maintain these relationships during good times so they're genuinely available during challenging times. Give support to others. Stay connected. Build real relationships, not transactional networks you only activate when you need something. The eighth component is recovery and renewal. Sustained problem-solving requires periods of rest and renewal. You cannot maintain peak performance indefinitely without burning out. Building recovery periods into your problem-solving process prevents burnout and maintains long-term effectiveness. Practice active recovery techniques that restore your mental energy and perspective. This might include physical exercise that clears your mind, meditation that quiets mental chatter, time in nature that provides perspective, creative activities that engage different parts of your brain, or genuine social connection with people who energize rather than drain you. Find what genuinely renews you specifically, not what works for other people, and build it into your regular routine. The final component is meaning-making. Problems are easier to face when you understand how solving them connects to your larger purpose and deepest values. When you can see how your current challenges contribute to your growth, serve people you care about, or advance causes you believe in, you can endure temporary discomfort for meaningful long-term benefits. Connect your problem-solving efforts to your deepest values and highest aspirations. How does solving this problem make you a better person? How does it serve people you care about? How does it contribute to causes you believe in? How does it move you toward the life you genuinely want to create? Mental resilience is like physical fitness. It requires consistent practice and gradually increasing challenges. But once developed, it becomes one of your most valuable assets, enabling you to tackle problems that would completely overwhelm people with less resilient minds. Chapter 8. Advanced Moves. 4. Complex Problems. Once you've mastered the foundational problem-solving skills, you're ready for advanced techniques that handle complex, multidimensional challenges. These are the strategies that separate good problem solvers from truly exceptional ones, the approaches that work when simple solutions fail. The first advanced technique is systems intervention. Most persistent problems exist within systems that actively maintain and reinforce them. You can't solve these problems by addressing isolated components. You have to intervene at the systems level to create lasting change. Map the entire system that surrounds your problem. Include all the people, processes, environments, incentives, feedback loops, and cultural norms that influence the situation. Look for leverage points where small changes can create cascading effects throughout the entire system. Leverage points often exist in information flows, decision-making authority, resource allocation, or unspoken cultural norms. Sometimes, changing who has access to specific information completely transforms how decisions are made. Sometimes, Shifting budget priorities eliminates the conditions that create recurring problems. Sometimes, challenging unspoken rules opens up possibilities that were always available but never considered. The second technique is paradoxical thinking. Some problems can only be solved by doing the opposite of what seems logical or intuitive. This requires the mental flexibility to consider approaches that contradict conventional wisdom or your initial instincts. If your problem is feeling overwhelmed by too many responsibilities, the paradoxical solution might be taking on one carefully chosen additional responsibility that forces you to become more ruthlessly efficient with everything else. If your problem is social anxiety, the solution might be deliberately putting yourself in more social situations rather than avoiding them. Gradually building confidence through exposure rather than safety. Practice asking yourself, what if the opposite approach would work better? What if the thing I'm avoiding is actually the solution? What if my resistance to certain actions is exactly why those actions might be effective? The third technique is multi-level problem solving. Complex challenges often exist simultaneously at multiple levels: personal, interpersonal, organizational, societal. You need different strategies for each level and coordination between your approaches. If your problem is career dissatisfaction, the personal level might involve clarifying your values and developing new skills. The interpersonal level might involve negotiating with your manager or building strategic professional relationships. The organizational level might involve advocating for policy changes or cultural shifts in your company. The societal level might involve industry-wide trends or economic factors you need to navigate. Address multiple levels simultaneously rather than assuming that fixing one level will magically solve everything. Sometimes, personal changes enable interpersonal improvements, which create organizational opportunities, which contribute to broader societal shifts. Chapter 8. Advanced Moves. Devam. The fourth technique is temporal problem solving. Some problems can only be solved across time through carefully sequenced actions. You can't do everything at once, but you can create a strategic timeline where each phase builds on previous accomplishments. If your problem is launching your own business while maintaining financial stability, your temporal solution might involve building skills and saving money aggressively in Phase 1, developing your product or service and testing the market in Phase 2, transitioning to part-time employment while growing your business in Phase 3, and finally, launching full-time once you've proven the model and built sufficient runway in Phase 4. Design your problem-solving timeline to account for learning curves, relationship building, resource accumulation, and market timing. Some solutions require patience and strategic sequencing rather than immediate dramatic action. The fifth technique is constraint leverage. Instead of seeing limitations as barriers to overcome, use them as creative catalysts that force innovation and eliminate options that weren't really viable anyway. If you have severely limited financial resources, that constraint might force you to develop solutions that are more creative, sustainable, and scalable than expensive approaches would have been. If you have extremely limited time, that constraint might force you to focus only on genuinely high-impact activities and ruthlessly eliminate everything non-essential. List all your constraints and ask how each one might actually help you find better solutions rather than prevent them. What possibilities do these limitations open up? What approaches do they make necessary that you wouldn't have considered otherwise if you had unlimited resources? The sixth technique is stakeholder orchestration. Complex problems usually involve multiple people with wildly different perspectives, priorities, and resources. Instead of trying to solve these problems unilaterally or forcing your solution on others, orchestrate collaborative solutions that align everyone's interests. Map all the stakeholders who are affected by or could influence your problem. Understand deeply what each stakeholder genuinely wants, what they're afraid of losing, what resources they control, and what would motivate them to enthusiastically support your solution rather than resist it. Design solutions that create genuine value for multiple stakeholders simultaneously. The best solutions transform potential opponents into enthusiastic allies by addressing their concerns and leveraging their unique strengths. The seventh technique is scenario planning. When facing significant uncertainty about future conditions, develop multiple solution pathways for different possible scenarios. This prevents you from being caught completely off guard and allows you to adapt quickly when circumstances change. Identify the key uncertainties that could dramatically affect your problem and solution. Create 3 to 5 scenarios that represent different combinations of these uncertainties playing out. Develop contingent solutions for each scenario and identify actions that work effectively across multiple scenarios. This approach is particularly valuable for major career decisions, business planning, relationship challenges, and financial planning, where external factors beyond your control significantly influence outcomes. The eighth technique is meta-problem analysis. Sometimes your real problem isn't the obvious issue you're trying to solve. It's your fundamental approach to problems in general, your consistent patterns, recurring assumptions, or persistent blind spots. Step back and examine your problem-solving patterns with brutal honesty. Do you consistently choose solutions that look impressive on paper, but don't account for your actual personality and genuine preferences? Do you systematically avoid certain types of solutions because of unexamined fear or past experiences? Do you consistently underestimate implementation challenges or overestimate your available resources? Solving the meta problem often makes individual problems infinitely easier to handle. If you realize that you consistently underestimate time requirements, you can adjust all your future planning accordingly and immediately become more effective. The ninth technique is resource synthesis. Advanced problems often require combining resources in novel ways rather than applying single resources directly to the challenge. Look for creative ways to combine your time, money, skills, relationships, and opportunities to create solutions that wouldn't be possible using any single resource in isolation. You might combine your professional expertise with someone else's extensive network to create valuable business opportunities neither of you could access alone. You might combine your available time with online learning resources to develop highly valuable skills without expensive formal education. You might combine your financial resources with other people's time and specialized expertise to implement solutions you couldn't possibly handle alone. The final advanced technique is solution evolution. The absolute best solutions aren't static and fixed. They evolve and improve continuously over time through feedback, changing circumstances, and new opportunities that emerge. Design your solutions to be adaptive and improvable rather than rigid and permanent. Build learning mechanisms into your solutions so you can continuously refine and optimize them based on real-world results. Create specific feedback loops that provide clear information about what's working exceptionally well and what isn't working at all. Stay genuinely alert to new resources, unexpected opportunities, and fresh insights that could significantly enhance your approach. Plan for solution evolution from the very beginning, rather than hoping your first approach will be perfect and permanent. Expect that your solution will need to change and improve substantially over time, and design flexibility into your entire implementation process. These advanced techniques require dedicated practice and real-world experience to master. Start by applying them to smaller, less critical problems to build your skills before tackling major life challenges. The investment in developing these capabilities will pay enormous dividends for the rest of your problem-solving career. Chapter 9. When problems come in packs, real-world problems rarely exist in comfortable isolation. They come in overwhelming clusters with multiple interconnected challenges that influence each other in maddeningly complex ways. These multi-layered problems require sophisticated approaches that address several issues simultaneously while managing the intricate relationships between them. The first step in handling complex problem clusters is relationship mapping. You need to understand clearly how your problems connect to and influence each other. Some problems directly cause other problems. Some are merely symptoms of deeper underlying issues. Some are completely separate, but compete for the same limited resources and attention. Create a visual map that shows all your current challenges and draws clear lines connecting related problems. Use different types of lines to show different relationships. Solid lines for direct causal relationships. Dotted lines for indirect influences. Arrows to show the direction of influence. Different colors to show whether impacts are positive or negative. This mapping process often reveals that what seemed like 5 completely separate problems is actually one core issue creating multiple symptoms across your life. Or it might show that 2 problems are creating a vicious reinforcing cycle that makes both progressively worse over time. Understanding these relationships prevents you from accidentally solving one problem in a way that makes others dramatically worse. The second step is priority sequencing. You cannot possibly solve everything at once, but the specific order in which you tackle problems matters enormously. Some problems absolutely need to be solved before others become even remotely solvable. Some problems, when solved effectively, make other problems disappear automatically without additional effort. Some problems deteriorate rapidly if left unaddressed while you work on other issues. Identify which problems are foundational versus which are dependent. Foundational problems enable or prevent solutions to other problems. Dependent problems can only be solved after foundational issues are adequately addressed. For example, if you simultaneously have severe financial stress and serious relationship problems, and the relationship problems are largely caused by financial pressure and constant money arguments. Addressing the financial situation first might resolve both issues. But trying to fix the relationship without addressing the underlying financial stress will likely fail repeatedly. Look specifically for problems that serve as powerful leverage points. These are challenges that, when solved, create positive ripple effects across multiple areas of your life. Solving one carefully chosen leverage point problem might eliminate or significantly reduce several dependent problems automatically. The third step is resource allocation strategy. Complex problem clusters demand extremely careful resource management. You have strictly limited time, energy, attention, and money. How you strategically distribute these precious resources across multiple problems determines your overall success or failure. Use the classic 80-20 principle to identify which problems deserve the majority of your focused resources. Usually, a small number of core issues create the overwhelming majority of your stress and limitation. Focus most of your effort on these genuinely high-impact problems while maintaining only minimal attention on less critical issues. Create explicit resource budgets for different categories of problems. How much time can you realistically dedicate to career issues versus relationship issues versus health issues this month? How much mental energy can you invest in planning versus actual execution? How much money can you allocate to different solution attempts without creating new financial problems? The fourth step is synergy identification. Look actively for solutions that address multiple problems simultaneously. These synergistic approaches are dramatically more efficient than solving each problem separately, and often create powerful momentum that accelerates progress across all areas. If you're simultaneously dealing with health problems, financial stress, and social isolation, a solution that involves starting a fitness-related side business could potentially address all three issues at once. The business generates additional income. The fitness component directly improves your health, and the customer interactions provide valuable social connection. If you're facing career stagnation, significant skill gaps, and lack of professional network, joining or creating a professional development mastermind group could address all three challenges. The group activities build skills, the networking creates valuable connections, and the relationships often lead to career opportunities. The fifth step is interference management. Some solutions, unfortunately, create interference with other solutions you're trying to implement. Working late consistently to advance your career might seriously interfere with family time needed to solve relationship problems. Strict budgeting to solve financial issues might interfere with social activities needed to address isolation problems. Anticipate these conflicts clearly and design solutions that minimize interference. This might involve careful time scheduling that protects both career advancement and family connection time. It might involve finding free or extremely low-cost social activities that don't conflict with budgeting goals. Sometimes you need to deliberately sequence solutions to avoid interference entirely. Address one problem intensively for a defined period, then shift primary focus to another problem. This concentrated approach can be more effective than trying to make minimal progress on everything simultaneously. The sixth step is cascading solutions. Some problems, when solved effectively, create favorable conditions that make other problems infinitely easier to solve. These cascading effects can be strategically planned and leveraged to accelerate overall progress dramatically. Solving a chronic sleep problem might improve your energy and mood significantly, which makes it easier to exercise regularly, which improves your health and confidence, which enhances your work performance and relationships. Instead of treating each issue separately, you solve the sleep problem with full understanding that it will create positive effects across multiple life areas. Identify which problems, when solved, would create the most beneficial cascading effects throughout your entire problem cluster. These become priority problems not just because of their direct impact, but because of their powerful indirect benefits across your life. The seventh step is system buffer creation. Complex problem solving is inherently unpredictable. Solutions consistently take longer than your best estimates. Unexpected obstacles arise regularly. Some approaches fail completely despite your best efforts. Building adequate buffers into your system prevents individual setbacks from derailing your entire approach and destroying your motivation. Create time buffers by planning for solutions to take significantly longer than your optimistic estimates. Create resource buffers by maintaining reserves of time, money, and energy for unexpected challenges. Create emotional buffers by building strong support systems and stress management practices that sustain you through genuinely difficult periods. These buffers aren't pessimistic planning or negative thinking. They're realistic preparation that allows you to maintain steady progress even when individual solutions encounter serious problems. The eighth step is progress tracking systems. With multiple problems and solutions simultaneously in play, you absolutely need sophisticated tracking systems to monitor progress, identify what's actually working, and make strategic adjustments. Create simple dashboards that show progress across all your problem areas. Use straightforward metrics that capture both leading indicators and lagging results. Track your resource allocation carefully to ensure you're investing effort where it creates the most meaningful impact. Review your entire problem cluster weekly to identify emerging patterns, unexpected connections, and necessary strategy adjustments. Monthly reviews should assess whether your overall approach is working and whether your problem priorities need to shift based on changing circumstances. The final step is adaptive strategy management. Your problem cluster will evolve substantially as you solve individual problems, as your circumstances change, and as you learn more about the complex relationships between issues. Your strategy needs to evolve accordingly. Build genuine flexibility into your approach. Don't become so rigidly committed to your initial plan that you miss valuable opportunities to improve it based on real-world feedback. Stay genuinely alert to new problems that emerge and existing problems that disappear or diminish in importance. Adjust your resource allocation dynamically as some problems become more critical and others become less urgent. Expect that solving complex problem clusters takes substantial time and sustained patience. You're not just solving individual problems in isolation. You're systematically transforming entire systems of your life. This transformation is absolutely worth the effort because it creates deep, lasting change rather than temporary, superficial fixes that need constant maintenance. Chapter 10. Building a problem-solving life. The ultimate goal of everything we've discussed isn't just fixing your current issues and then going back to normal life. It's building robust systems and capabilities that prevent problems from occurring in the first place and allow you to handle future challenges far more effectively than you ever could before. This final section focuses on creating sustainable problem-solving capacity that serves you powerfully for the rest of your life. The first principle of sustainable problem-solving is prevention system design. Most problems are actually predictable and preventable if you develop the right systems and habits proactively. Instead of constantly reacting to crisis after crisis, invest your energy strategically in preventing problems from reaching crisis level. Analyze your historical problem patterns with genuine honesty. What types of challenges do you face repeatedly? What specific conditions typically precede these problems? What early warning signs could you monitor more carefully? Understanding your personal problem patterns allows you to create intelligent early intervention systems. If you repeatedly face financial stress, create monitoring systems that alert you to problematic spending patterns before they become serious. If you repeatedly experience relationship conflicts, develop communication habits that address small issues before they escalate into major problems. If you repeatedly face health issues, create lifestyle systems that maintain your physical and mental well-being proactively. The second principle is capacity building. Your problem-solving effectiveness depends fundamentally on your underlying capabilities: mental clarity, emotional resilience, physical energy, financial resources, social connections, and specialized knowledge. Continuously developing these capabilities makes every future problem easier to handle. Create specific development plans for each area that significantly affects your problem-solving capacity. Read systematically to expand your knowledge and perspective. Exercise regularly to maintain the physical energy needed for sustained effort. Build and maintain relationships that provide support, advice, and opportunities. Develop financial reserves that give you valuable options during challenging times. Think of capacity building as compound interest for your problem-solving ability. Small, consistent investments in your capabilities create exponential returns over time. The third principle is learning system creation. Every problem you solve teaches you something genuinely valuable, but only if you capture and organize those lessons systematically rather than letting them evaporate. Create dedicated systems that extract maximum learning from every problem-solving experience. After solving any significant problem, conduct a formal lessons learned review. What worked exceptionally well in your approach? What would you definitely do differently next time? What general principles can you extract from this specific experience? What capabilities did you develop that will help with future challenges? Document these insights in a personal problem-solving knowledge base that you can reference when facing similar challenges. Over time, this knowledge base becomes one of your most valuable resources. The fourth principle is environment optimization. Your physical environment, social environment, and information environment significantly influence your problem-solving effectiveness. Deliberately design these environments to support clear thinking, effective action, and continuous improvement. Create physical spaces that actively promote focus and creativity. Surround yourself with people who challenge your thinking constructively and support your growth genuinely. Curate information sources carefully that expand your perspective and provide valuable insights. Eliminate environmental factors that drain your energy unnecessarily or promote ineffective habits. Your environment should make good problem-solving choices automatic and bad choices difficult. This reduces your reliance on willpower and increases your consistency over time. The fifth principle is network development. Most complex problems require resources, knowledge, or perspectives that you don't possess individually. Building a strong network of diverse relationships gives you access to collective intelligence and resources that dramatically expand your problem-solving capacity. Cultivate relationships intentionally with people who have different expertise, experiences, and perspectives than you do. Include mentors who can provide wisdom and guidance based on experience, peers who can offer collaboration and accountability, and mentees who bring fresh energy and perspectives. Contribute genuine value to your network before you need assistance. Share knowledge generously. Make helpful introductions. Offer support freely. Celebrate others' successes authentically. This creates a foundation of goodwill that you can draw upon when facing challenging problems. The sixth principle is stress inoculation practice. Regular exposure to manageable challenges builds your capacity to handle larger problems when they inevitably arise. Deliberately seek out problems to solve, skills to develop, and challenges to overcome during stable periods. Take on projects that stretch your capabilities slightly beyond your current comfort zone. Learn new skills that require persistence and creative problem solving. Put yourself in situations where you have to think quickly and adapt to unexpected circumstances. This voluntary stress exposure builds both confidence and competence that serves you powerfully when involuntary problems arise. You develop concrete evidence that you can handle difficult situations, which reduces anxiety and improves performance under pressure. The seventh principle is recovery and renewal integration. Sustainable problem-solving requires balancing intense focused effort with adequate recovery. Build renewal practices into your regular routine that restore your energy, perspective, and creativity. Different types of renewal serve different purposes. Physical recovery restores your energy and health. Mental recovery clears your thinking and reduces cognitive fatigue. Emotional recovery processes stress and maintains psychological well-being. Spiritual recovery connects you to meaning and purpose. Schedule regular recovery activities and protect that time as carefully as you protect important meetings and commitments. Recovery isn't laziness or weakness. It's essential maintenance that keeps your problem-solving capacity functioning at peak levels. The eighth principle is continuous improvement systems. Your problem-solving capabilities should improve steadily throughout your entire life. Create systems that promote continuous learning, skill development, and strategic refinement. Regularly assess your problem-solving effectiveness honestly and identify specific areas for improvement. Seek out new techniques, frameworks, and perspectives that could enhance your approach. Practice advanced problem-solving skills on low-stakes challenges to prepare for high-stakes situations. Set annual goals for improving specific aspects of your problem-solving capacity. This might involve developing emotional regulation skills, learning new analytical techniques, building particular types of relationships, or gaining expertise in areas relevant to your goals. Chapter 11. Teaching others to fish. The highest level of problem-solving mastery involves teaching others to solve their own problems effectively. When you can help others develop their problem-solving capacity, you multiply your impact exponentially and create positive change that extends far beyond your individual efforts. Teaching problem-solving requires a completely different skill set than solving problems yourself. You need to guide others to insights rather than providing solutions directly. You need to help them develop their own thinking rather than thinking for them. You need to build their confidence and capacity rather than creating dependency on your expertise. The first principle of teaching problem-solving is leading with questions rather than answers. When someone brings you a problem, your instinct might be to immediately offer solutions or advice. This approach feels helpful in the moment, but actually creates dependency and prevents the other person from developing their own problem-solving muscles. Instead, ask thoughtful questions that guide them through the problem-solving process. What exactly is the problem they're trying to solve? What have they already tried? What patterns do they notice? What resources do they have available? What would success actually look like? These questions help them develop their own clarity and insights. They arrive at solutions that feel authentic to them rather than imposed from outside. They also build their capacity to ask themselves better questions in future situations when you're not around to help. The second principle is teaching frameworks rather than specific solutions. Don't just solve their immediate problem for them. Teach them frameworks they can apply independently to similar challenges in the future. Show them how to break down complex problems into manageable pieces, how to identify root causes instead of treating symptoms, how to generate multiple solutions creatively, how to evaluate options systematically. When you teach frameworks, you give people tools they can use independently forever. They become more capable and confident problem solvers rather than people who need to consult others whenever challenges arise. The third principle is modeling metacognitive awareness. Think out loud about your own thinking process when helping others with problems. Show them how you notice your assumptions forming, how you catch yourself falling into mental traps, how you step back to assess whether your approach is actually working. This metacognitive modeling is one of the most valuable things you can teach. Most people never learn to observe their own thinking patterns objectively. When you demonstrate this awareness openly, you give them a skill that improves every aspect of their problem-solving for life. The fourth principle is creating safe experimentation spaces. People need genuine permission to try solutions that might not work, to make mistakes, and to learn through direct experience rather than avoiding all risk. Create environments where failure is treated as valuable information rather than condemnation or evidence of inadequacy. Encourage small experiments rather than major life changes that feel terrifying. Help them design low-risk tests of potential solutions. Support them through the learning process rather than judging outcomes harshly. This builds their willingness to take action even when they're not certain about results, which is absolutely essential for effective problem solving. The fifth principle is building problem-solving confidence gradually. Start with problems that are challenging but solvable given their current capacity. Success builds confidence, which enables them to tackle progressively more complex challenges over time. Don't throw people into deep water and expect them to learn to swim through sheer survival instinct. Help them build competence progressively and systematically. Celebrate their successes authentically and help them extract valuable lessons from their experiences. When leading teams through problem-solving processes, apply these same principles at group level. Use collaborative frameworks that engage everyone's thinking rather than imposing solutions from leadership. Create psychological safety where team members feel comfortable sharing ideas and concerns without fear of judgment. Design team problem-solving sessions that build genuine collective intelligence rather than relying exclusively on individual expertise. Use techniques like structured brainstorming, perspective-taking exercises, and systematic evaluation processes that leverage diverse viewpoints effectively. In organizational contexts, focus on building problem-solving culture rather than just solving immediate problems. This involves creating systems for continuous learning, encouraging innovation and intelligent experimentation, and rewarding thoughtful analysis rather than just results. Remember that teaching problem-solving is itself a complex problem that requires ongoing refinement. Pay attention to what works with different people and situations. Continuously improve your ability to guide others to effective solutions. The ultimate goal is to create problem solvers who eventually surpass your own capabilities. When you successfully teach someone to solve problems more effectively than they could before, you've created lasting positive change that continues generating benefits long after your direct involvement ends. Chapter 12. Solving Problems That Matter. As you develop genuine mastery in problem solving, you'll discover that the greatest challenges and opportunities lie in applying the skills to problems that extend beyond your immediate personal circumstances. This is where problem solving becomes a powerful force for positive change in your community and the world. The first level of expanded impact involves community problem solving. Every community faces challenges that affect multiple people but seem too complex or entrenched for individuals to address effectively. These might include local economic issues, environmental problems, social tensions, or systemic inefficiencies in local institutions. Apply the same systematic approach to community problems that you use for personal challenges. Map the stakeholders carefully, understand the underlying systems, identify root causes rather than symptoms. Generate collaborative solutions that serve multiple interests simultaneously. The key difference is that community problems require building consensus and coordinating multiple people with different perspectives and priorities. Your role becomes orchestrating collective problem solving rather than solving problems unilaterally. Start by identifying community problems that align with your values and leverage your unique strengths and resources. You don't have to tackle every community issue. Focus on areas where you can make meaningful contributions while developing your skills in collective problem solving. The second level involves professional and industry impact. Every profession and industry has persistent problems that limit effectiveness, create inefficiencies, or prevent optimal outcomes. These problems often persist because people within the system become accustomed to them or don't believe change is possible. Your fresh perspective combined with systematic problem-solving skills can reveal solutions that insiders completely miss. You can often apply insights from other domains to challenges that have been resistant to traditional approaches. Look for problems in your professional sphere that affect many people but haven't been adequately addressed. These might involve workflow inefficiencies, communication breakdowns, resource allocation issues, or misaligned incentives that create perverse outcomes. The third level involves innovation and entrepreneurship. Some problems can only be solved through creating new products, services, or business models that didn't previously exist. This requires combining problem-solving skills with creativity, market understanding, and execution capability. Entrepreneurial problem-solving involves identifying problems that many people face but no one has solved effectively. Then building scalable solutions that can reach large numbers of people. This doesn't necessarily mean starting a traditional business. Social entrepreneurs create solutions for social problems. Artists solve problems related to meaning, beauty, and human expression. Activists solve problems related to justice and systemic change. The fourth level involves systemic and policy impact. Some problems can only be solved through changes to laws, regulations, institutional practices, or cultural norms. These systemic problems require working within political and social systems to create change at scale. Systemic problem-solving requires understanding how institutions actually work, how decisions are made, and how change happens within complex systems. It often involves building coalitions, influencing decision-makers, and creating pressure for change through various channels. This type of problem-solving requires patience and persistence, as systemic change often takes years or even decades to achieve. But the impact can be enormous, affecting millions of people and future generations. As you expand your problem-solving impact, remember several key principles. First, start where you are with what you have. You don't need to wait until you've achieved perfect mastery to begin contributing to larger problems. Your current skills and resources can make meaningful contributions right now. Second, focus on leverage points where your unique combination of skills, knowledge, and resources can create disproportionate impact. Don't try to work on every problem. Find the intersection between what you're passionate about, what you're exceptionally good at, and what the world genuinely needs. Third, build collaborative relationships with others who share your commitment to positive change. Complex problems require diverse perspectives and complementary skills. Your effectiveness will be multiplied when you work with others rather than trying to create change alone. Fourth, maintain long-term perspective while taking immediate action. Significant problems took time to develop and will take time to solve. Maintain hope and persistence even when progress seems frustratingly slow. Finally, remember that working on problems beyond yourself isn't just about external impact. It's also about personal growth and meaning. People who dedicate their problem-solving skills to serving others often find that this work provides the deepest satisfaction and sense of purpose in their lives. Chapter 13. Your problem-solving journey starts now. You now possess a complete framework for solving any problem you will ever face. More importantly, you understand that becoming an exceptional problem solver isn't about memorizing techniques or following rigid processes mechanically. It's about developing a way of thinking and being that transforms challenges into opportunities for growth and contribution. The journey of problem-solving mastery changes you at fundamental levels. It builds unshakable confidence because you develop concrete evidence that you can handle whatever life throws at you. It builds genuine resilience because you learn to see obstacles as information rather than insurmountable barriers. It builds deep wisdom because you learn to see patterns and connections that others completely miss. But the most profound transformation is this: you stop being a victim of your circumstances and become the active creator of your life. Problems no longer happen to you randomly. They become raw material for building the life you actually want to live. This shift in identity is what separates people who occasionally solve problems from people who consistently create extraordinary results. When you see yourself as someone who solves problems effectively, you unconsciously seek out challenges that help you grow. When others see obstacles, you see opportunities waiting to be seized. The ripple effects of this transformation extend far beyond your individual success. People around you begin to benefit from your problem-solving capabilities. You become someone others turn to for guidance and support. You model what's possible when someone develops these skills systematically. Your family benefits because you create more stability, opportunity, and positive momentum in all areas of life. Your career advances because employers and clients highly value people who can reliably solve difficult challenges. Your relationships improve because you bring solution-oriented thinking to interpersonal difficulties. Your community benefits because you become someone who takes initiative to address local problems rather than just complaining about them. Society benefits because you contribute to the pool of people who can tackle complex challenges that affect large numbers of people. But remember that mastery is a journey, not a destination. Every problem you solve teaches you something new. Every challenge you face builds additional capacity. Every technique you practice strengthens your problem-solving muscles. The frameworks you've learned provide structure and direction, but your unique experiences, insights, and creative applications will make your problem-solving approach distinctly your own. Trust yourself to adapt these tools to your personality, circumstances, and goals. Stay genuinely curious about new approaches and perspectives. The field of problem-solving continues to evolve as we learn more about human psychology, organizational behavior, and systems thinking. Continue learning and growing throughout your life. Seek out increasingly complex and meaningful problems to solve. The satisfaction and growth that come from solving difficult challenges make the effort worthwhile. Don't settle for easy problems when you have the capacity to tackle significant challenges that create real impact. Share what you learn generously with others. Teaching problem-solving to others reinforces your own learning while multiplying your positive impact. Every person you help become a better problem solver creates expanding networks of positive change. Most importantly, remember that the goal isn't to eliminate all problems from your life. That's impossible and would actually make you weaker. Problems are how you grow, how you contribute, and how you discover capabilities you didn't know you possessed. The goal is to become someone who solves problems so effectively that your life becomes a continuous process of positive transformation and meaningful contribution. Chapter 14. The Invitation. Here's what I want you to understand deeply. The difference between where you are right now and where you genuinely want to be is simply a series of problems to be solved. With the frameworks, techniques, and mindset you now possess, those problems become stepping stones rather than obstacles. Your future self is already waiting for you on the other side of the problems you're currently facing. Every challenge you solve moves you closer to that person. Every obstacle you overcome makes you stronger and more capable. The time for learning is over. The time for application has begun. Take the next problem in your life, whatever it is, and apply everything you've learned. Start the transformation that will define the rest of your life. Your problems are not punishments or barriers or evidence that something is wrong with you. They are your curriculum for becoming the person you were meant to be. Embrace them, solve them. Use them to build a life that genuinely matters. The world desperately needs more people who can solve problems effectively. It needs more people who see challenges as opportunities. It needs more people who bring solution-oriented thinking to every situation they encounter. Become one of those people. Start today. Start right now. Your future self and everyone whose life you'll touch through your problem-solving capabilities are dependent on you to begin. This is your moment. This is your opportunity. This is your invitation to join the ranks of people who don't just survive their challenges, but use them as fuel for extraordinary success and contribution. The choice is yours, but the framework is complete. Everything you need to solve any problem and build any life you choose to create is now within your grasp. Use it wisely. Use it boldly. Use it to create the life you've always known was possible. Because here's the truth that nobody else will tell you. You were built for this. Every challenge you've faced until now was preparing you for what comes next. Every setback was teaching you resilience. Every failure was building your problem-solving capacity. You're ready. You've always been ready. You just needed the framework to channel that potential into systematic action. So take that first step. Identify the problem that matters most right now. Use the 5-layer method to understand what you're really dealing with. Find the root cause instead of treating symptoms. Generate multiple solutions instead of grabbing the first idea that pops up. Evaluate your options systematically. Then implement with persistence and flexibility. Track your progress. Celebrate small wins. Learn from setbacks. Adjust your approach based on feedback. Keep moving forward even when progress feels slow. And remember this, every single person who's ever solved a significant problem started exactly where you are now. Uncertain, overwhelmed, not sure if they could actually pull it off. But they started anyway. They took imperfect action. They learned along the way. They persisted through obstacles. They became the people they needed to be. To solve the problems they faced, you can do the same. You will do the same. Because you're not reading this by accident. You're here because some part of you knows that you're capable of more, that you're ready for more, that it's time to stop surviving and start thriving. Listen to that voice. Trust that instinct. Take that first step. Your life is waiting for you to claim it. Your problems are waiting to be solved. Your future is waiting to be created. The only question is, are you ready to begin? I think you are. I think you've been ready for longer than you realize. So let's do this together. One problem at a time. One solution at a time. One transformation at a time. Until the life you're living matches the life you've always known you were capable of creating. Welcome to your problem-solving journey. Welcome to your new life. It starts now. Powerful closing. Before you go, I want to leave you with one final thought that changed everything for me. The problems you're facing right now, they're not happening to you. They're happening for you. Every single one is an opportunity disguised as an obstacle. Every challenge is your life's way of asking you to level up. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You don't have to know exactly how everything will work out. You just have to be willing to start. Because problem solving isn't about being perfect. It's about being persistent. It's about showing up, even when you're scared, especially when you're scared. So here's my challenge to you. Take one problem that's been weighing on you, just one. Apply what you learned here, see what happens, and then do it again and again until problem solving becomes second nature. Until challenges excite you instead of paralyze you. Until you look back and barely recognize the person you used to be. That person who felt stuck. That person who didn't know what to do. That person who thought problems were happening to them. Because you're not that person anymore. You're someone who solves problems. Someone who creates solutions, someone who turns obstacles into opportunities. You're someone who thinks clear, stays strong, and wins every time. Now go prove it.